This is Kimberly. She's going to be making something lovely for you all today. She'll be assisted by Claire when we say to start. These two off with a round of applause. Thank you very much. My name is Michael. I will explain the process. Let me know if you have questions along the way. I'd be happy to answer those. But we are underway. In this started way, we start every glass object. That's by giving glass to work with. At the center of our stage, we have a melting furnace that holds glass at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 1150 Celsius, and that's the same temperature as lava. Just like lava glows bright orange, so is our clear, colorless glass. We like to start with clear glass, and then we like to add color, because then we have the ability to add pretty much whatever color we want. Commercially, there are over 200 glass colors available for us to use in glass making. So we purchase them, and they come to us in these little chips or shards. And just rolling through those small pieces, they heat up and they stick right up to the surface. So it's a little bit like sprinkles on ice cream. Now, just like painting a wall in your house, the more coats of color we apply, the more even that color application will be. So she's heated the color in once, and then she's rolled back through the color again for a second coating and better application. So she'll melt that color in, and then we'll get on with the inflation process. But the color typically goes on early, so that as we inflate and grow the object, that color will just stretch with it. So typically, when we make an object, we have a layer of clear, a thin layer of color, and then we'll put more clear on top of this to make a big object. So actually, if we took one of these pieces and we broke it, and we look at the cross section, the color layer would probably be about as thin as a sheet. So we'll organize the glass on the end of the pipe. The pipes are hollow, they're stainless steel, essentially big metal straws. But we'll blow into the pipe, trap the air with our thumb, and that air is pressurized and it's expanding from the heat, and that air will push into the soft glass. So if you watch it, you might see it get a little bit bigger. It's tough to see because of the color, but I just saw it grow a little bit. Anybody see that? Are you impressed? Not impressed. Don't cry. One person said that they were impressed. Everybody else, not sold, not convinced. Well, don't worry. This is just the beginning. This is the foundation. So we are going to put more clear glass on top of this. The reason we always build our glass up in layers is because at 2,100 degrees, the glass is very runny because of viscosity like table honey. And if we try to get a bunch of glass at once, it would simply drip and flow right off the end of the pipe. So we let this cool down. We need to speed that up with compressed air. Just like they blow on the soup, we cool your soup down, and blow on the glass and cool that down. And then we'll get back to the purpose. So if you look at our TV screens, I'll show you a short animation of what it looks like. Maybe. I'll show you a short animation of what it looks like in our furnace while we collect glass. This furnace holds 1,000 pounds of glass. All of that glass sits in a ceramic bowl. We dip the pipe beneath the surface and we turn to spool and wind on the additional layers. So now it has way more material, and this will be enough to make a piece of shameless clay. But if you look along the front of our stage, most of these pieces were made with about that much glass. So that should give you a good idea of the scale that we can achieve with these two layers. We organize that fresh layer of glass using a wooden scoop. That wood tool is soaked in water. The water turns to steam. The glass rides on the layer of steam, and that prevents us from burning up that wood tool really quickly. In fact, we use those wooden scoops for sometimes a couple of years before we have to replace them. So the wood scoop evenly distributes the glass around the bubble. Meanwhile, that initial bubble is reheating, it's softening, and this gives us the ability to continue shaping and continue inflating. Now, the inflation does happen in steps and stages. If in wanted, she could use her big, strong glass blower lungs, and she could blow this amount of glass up bigger than a beach ball, thinner than cellophane. She'd even pop it, and then show the wheel. We don't want to do that. But it's possible. We can make glass very thin. So small amounts of pressure, a little bit of working back and forth. She's also shaping now with a very interesting and often surprising tool to people. That pad in her hand is newspaper. We take about 8 sheets of newspaper, We fold it up in top secret glassmaker origami so that we have many sheets of paper, and then we soak it in water as well. It's as close as we can get to shaping glass with our bare hands. So just like the wooden scoop, the water in the newspaper turns to steam and the glass rides on the steam barrier. However, unlike the block, we will replace the newspaper after about a week because it's wet paper. So the big issue is that eventually it starts to tear and fall apart. The chemist was shaping this glass so that it will go into a mold. We have a whole series of molds, different shapes and sizes, and different internal textures. She's going to drop the glass into a mold, blow pretty hard, and when she comes out of that mold, she'll have texture. So that mold is one of the trickiest molds that we have to use. We call it the pineapple mold. And the pineapple mold has a bunch of little teeth inside. And if you go into that mold, the wrong shape, size, or temperature, you will get stuck in all of those undercuts of the teeth. And then you're embarrassed because everyone's body is stuck in the mold. But then your afternoon is ruined because you very carefully and delicately spend in between all of our shows chipping the glass out with a butter knife and trying not to damage the glass. Not that I've done this, of course. Maybe seen it happen, but it would never be me to get stuck in that mold. But it can make that look very easy. So that mold does not tell us what to make. It simply gives us that texture. It's not a deep texture, though, so we want to work pretty quickly because glass naturally wants to fall up and it naturally wants to be smooth. So if we overheat the glass after going into that mold, we will melt the texture away. So she'll be pretty quick in her shaping and her flating from here on out. She works back and forth between the bench and the reheating furnace. The reheating furnace does not have glass inside it. It is just a big chamber of heat that keeps the glass soft and malleable. But then she's also working on creating a couple different zones of our glass here. She used some steel tools to squeeze a line into the glass. Those steel tools, we call them jacks. This is what they look like. And she created a line that we call the jack line. And that's like the line in a chocolate bar. That line in chocolate that tells chocolate where to snap and break. This is going to tell our glass where to snap and break. And that's going to become the top and the opening of the piece that she's making. So that means she's working on the bottom of this piece first. So the part closest to all of us, that will be the bottom. And this is standard order of operations. Typically in hand glass, we do work on the bottom first, we work on the top second. So now she works on inflating a little bit further, and then refining that jack line, that construction. This is interesting, or at least I find it interesting. These jacks, these are a handmade tool. Pretty niche market, you can imagine, for handmade glass one tools. I was just looking online. Someone sold a pair of these used. There's a tool maker who is no longer living, but some of these tools are often regarded as the best glass making tools. And I just saw a pair of these sell for $2,600 on eBay.
Wow.
You can also get them for like a couple $100. They were the same. But pretty impressive. Everybody has their preference for the tools that they like best. Who makes those tools? We have some from all of the big players in the tool market. We have some from Japan, some from Italy, here in the United States. But as Kim blows this up, she did use that torch a little bit. We've got that torch handily behind her. And that torch, we call it the fluffy torch. We use that to focus heat in certain areas. The reheating furnace, that makes everything hot. But the torch allows us to focus heat a little more specifically. But when we get that torch out, that's when I see most camera phones go up. Because it's pretty cool to see the big torch. And it's also pretty fun to use the big torch at work. But that is a propane torch. So we use the torch to heat certain areas. We use the compressed air to cool certain areas. Glass making is more about temperature management, really, than inflating. So we call ourselves glass blowers, but that's actually a very small part of what we do. But he was cooling the bottom of this to add some additional material onto the bottom. So we're going to add some glass, which will become the foot of the piece that she's making. So this bowl is a similar style foot. some clear glass added right onto the bottom that helps serve as a pedestal to raise the piece up a little bit. We have a lot of different ways we can add heat and raise up our vessels, but that's a pretty common one that you'll see amongst glass makers. So this move here is pretty interesting as well. We call this casting off. When we put this hot bit of glass on, it sticks and fuses, and then we just pull it away. And you maybe saw that glass just drip right off the end. That's a good way to show you how runny that glass really is straight out of the furnace. So that's what Kim's been controlling. She's been preventing this glass from dripping all over the floor. So that hot glass, it sticks and fuses permanently. Hot glass will stick to other hot things. In fact, the pipes that we're using, those are hot also. We preheat the pipes and the rods that we use so that the glass will stick. So we preheat them to about 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. So we got the foot on, and now we're done working on the bottom. So the next step will be to start working on the top. So Claire will make a temporary handle, what we call a punty, and we'll use that to hang on to this piece so that we can work on the top. So while she's doing that, Kim's just going to finalize the shape of this vessel, make sure everything is how she likes it, and we'll start working at the top. Now by the time we finish this will be a pretty short piece being made. But that's because Kim is an experienced glass maker. So it takes a long time to become a proficient beginner in glass making. He's been blowing glass for about 3 years. And we would actually say that that's on the side of a beginner glass maker. So it takes a really long time to start to learn and understand the nuance. Right now, she's focusing the heat on the top section, and she's taking these short heats to maintain temperature. If we let the glass cool too much, in the next move where we go to break it, if that glass is too cold, it can shatter. So she is using her experience to gauge the temperature to make sure that doesn't happen. We don't use thermometers. And the reason that she knows the temperature is because she's definitely broken things. That's how we all learn. So we don't want to let the glass get too warm that it's moving around. We don't want it to be too cold that it breaks. It's the Goldilocks moment. Not too hot, not too cold. Just right. So we'll break this down. We'll intentionally cool just that line, just that constriction with a couple drops of water. And then all you take is a little tap, and that piece breaks right off. So that is what we would call successful glass breaking. And I said we give these 2 round of applause. And now we take time for it to warm back up. So this is a good time for questions. Any questions? Yes? Yeah, how likely is it for us to burn ourselves? I suppose, technically the odds are high because we're around a lot of hot stuff. But the reality is that we don't get burned that often. And we don't get burned that often because we're scared to get burned. Someone asked me last week, they said, "Are you afraid of getting burned?" And I said, "Yeah, that's what keeps us from getting burned." But it's really rare that we get burned by glass. We know that's hot, we're not going to touch it. So the metal tools, that's where we're more likely to get burned. Because this metal tool, if it's 800 degrees, looks exactly the same as its room temperature. And what you see with a lot of beginners, because we use both ends of this tool, what you'll see is the beginner will use the blades of the jacks, and then when they go to use this end, they do this. And you get a nice vertical strike right down your arm. So usually, you'll learn the lesson once, and then you don't forget. Yes? Yeah, the paddles that we're using. So we have a variety of paddles. We have wood paddles, we have graphite paddles, and we do have metal paddles. And we use them just at different points in the process, depending on usually the temperature of the glass. So if glass is really, really hot, fresh out of the furnace, we like to use the graphite, or we like to use the metal. And we're using them to flatten glass or shape the glass. We don't typically use wood at that point because we can embed wood ash into the glass that the wood can actually stick. So we'll use metal or graphite. As the glass cools though, we'll switch to the wood tool because it's a little softer and then it's not going to pull as much heat out as quickly. So we use the wood paddles to flatten the forms, but this one's all burnt up. It says shield only, so you're not supposed to use these ones to shape glass, but clearly because of how burnt it is. But we'll sometimes use this to put in between the glass maker and the glass, just to shield them from some of the heat that's being radiated off of that piece. But yeah, so we use them for shaping and shielding. Yes. How hard is it to copy to perfectly copy a glass piece? It's hard, but it's not uncommon, and it's not completely impossible. If we want to perfectly copy something, we can get very close. We'll take caliper measurements of a piece. So if we want to replicate multiple pieces, we'll take caliper measurements, and we'll use those to check them throughout the process. We actually have a limited production line here at the museum, so we have certain designs that we make to sell, and we sell them online. So if it says online that it's 11 inches tall, we got the perfect spot for it. You want it to show you pretty close to 11 inches. So we can get pretty close. So Kim did just do something very interesting. She had cut some glass off. That's to thin and refine that lip. Sometimes it can be a little thick, right where we break the glass off of the pipe. But then she folded that lip back over onto itself, just for a nice style choice. Yeah. The biggest glass sculpture we've ever made. That's pretty tough. Biggest is hard because it can be in the size, but it can also be in the weight. At the beginning of the summer, there were some artists visiting, the De La Torre brothers, and we made a piece that was 35 pounds of glass. It was like this big on the end of a pipe. I've definitely worked with artists who made bigger things that were less weight. But 30, how tall was it? One of my professors in college was obsessed with making something 6 feet tall, which is, if you're counting my hair, that's as tall as me. So I see a couple more hands, but I don't want you to miss this next part because we're going to make this. Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. It says not yet. She's going to open this a little bit further, but at some point she's going to make this really big. So she's going to keep shaping this a little bit more, but the final move will come from some of the invisible forces that we use. So that will be a little bit of centrifugal force, that will be a little bit of gravity, but that will happen on the next move. As she starts to heat the glass, it's going to start to soften, and it will want to relax. And we'll prevent that collapse just by changing our turning speed. So right now we have a really lovely bowl, but she's going to make it bigger. She's a bigger bowl. And in my opinion, a bigger bowl, better for ice cream. So this should be a good ice cream. So watch closely. You should see it start to happen on our TV monitors. We have a few inside of that ring heating furnace. You should start to see the glass first. Start to wiggle and bobble there. Then she turns very quickly.
That's pretty cool.
So look at that. It spins all the way open, and then glass. It's not elastic when it's hot, so it's not like a balloon. It's not going to go back to its original round shape. So she slows down the turn, holds the glass in, pulls, heats the bubbles, and now it's completely frozen in place. The final step, remove this from the punty and put this into an oven where it will slowly cool overnight. So that's a process we call annealing. This glass will anneal for about 12 hours. We'll see it tomorrow. So a little tap. Look at that, breaks off perfect. This time we use a torch to fire polish the bottom. So it is broken glass there, it can be a little sharp. So we use that torch, we melt away any potential sharp spots, We
That's why
will
they put them in there.
whisk it away to the oven, and we will see this bowl in tomorrow.
Wow.
Load it up with some ice cream. There we
That's
have it.
crazy.
Oh, well, good
Almost
job.
1,000
That's
grams.
the